Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground.
Welcome to another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. My name is Louis Sung, and I will be your host, and I will be joined tonight by Chad Ronenbaum, and a little bit later by Antoine Staley of the Bleacher Report. We've got some stuff to talk about tonight. This includes, of course, we're going to be talking about the signing of cornerback Zack Bowman, and we're going to be talking about exactly what it is that his role with the team is going to be. Is he going to be special teams? Is he going to be a starter? What exactly is he going to be here for? We'll also go into real briefly about the newest signing of the team, LaRon Byrd, former University of Miami wide receiver, 6'4", so big wide receiver. That's always exciting to hear about. Maybe he can bring something to the team that we haven't talked about yet. We'll be talking about Mike Pouncey's contract extension and his reaction to receiving this new contract. Everybody has heard so far that Pouncey was very emotional, which he was. It was a very touching scene, and we're going to talk about what this means going forward for him and for the Dolphins. We'll also speculate about his actual contract numbers. Is he worth what he was given, or is this rather bad choice of words on the Dolphins' negotiations? And we'll also be talking about what he said about Billy Turner, which is very interesting because he said very interesting things about Billy Turner. And, of course, because we have to talk about this because it was all over Twitter, and unfortunately it was something that it kind of needs to be discussed because of the possibilities. But we will be going into the whole idea of the Dolphins trading Tannehill in our first for Chargers quarterback Phillip Rivers, who's currently on the trade block. And I have some very, very interesting things to say about that. But without further ado, let's start with Zack Bowman. And we're going to talk about exactly what it is that he might bring to the team. Bowman is a eight-year veteran. He spent his first 6 years with the Chicago Bears, and last year he was with the New York Giants. This will be his 8th year in the league, and now he's coming into Miami. He has some starting experience that I'm not going to deny. He did, and according to what the New York Giants fan base has told me, he was a pretty good player when he was called upon, which is always a good thing to hear. He's managed to have 176 tackles. He's forced 2 fumbles, recovered 6 of them, made 12 interceptions in his career, which is pretty impressive, and he's actually returned 1 for a touchdown. So now the question becomes, what exactly is Bowman here for? Is he here to become a starting cornerback, or is he here to simply be a special teams player like a lot of people have been saying that he's going to be? Chad, you go ahead, and I'll give you the floor.
I think all the above probably is what he's here for. I was very happy to see the signing. If you've been following me the last few weeks on the podcast, my preference has been not to draft a corner. I felt with Jamar Taylor and Will Davis, we have enough youth at the position right now that we don't need to be investing a high draft pick relative to our other needs right now. I felt we needed to bring in another veteran corner that would kind of replace what Cortland Finnegan was doing and to an extent what Jimmy Wilson was doing. And what Bowman gives us is a starting caliber corner. He's by no means going to be a dominant, corner that's going to beat out Brent Grimes or anything like that. I think he'll get the chance to compete against Jamar Taylor. I expect Jamar Taylor will win the battle and be the starting number 2 corner. But I think Bowman gives us somebody so that if Taylor gets hurt or if Grimes gets hurt, we can put in a veteran starting caliber corner, which is huge because, a lot of times in the NFL these days, you're needing 3 cornerbacks on the field at all times, and we really didn't have any depth at this point. So I was excited to see that they picked him up for the depth. I think he'll be a big contributor to the special team.
All right, thanks for that, Chad. And now we're going to bring in our special guest for the night, Antoine Staley, working for the Bleacher Report, covered the Miami Dolphins for quite some time, and he does many other things as well. So Antoine is what happened to Antoine? Okay, we'll bring him back in. He'll be back in a minute. So I understand. I get what you're saying, Chad. I think he's a decent depth signing, but the thing that always gets to me about these sort of thing is that people are looking at the signing of Bowman and they're immediately saying that, oh, he'll be the starter going forward. He's going to be the next. He's going to automatically become the starting cornerback for the Dolphins opposite Brent Grimes. But it drives me crazy that they're so quick to dismiss Jamar Taylor despite all the talent that he showed. It really is kind of annoying in that regard. We see the flashes, we see what he can do. The only thing that he's had going against him is that he gets hurt, and I understand the concerns. It's a legitimate concern. And they're also talking about Bowman's size. He's 6'1", as opposed to Jamar Taylor. He's not as big. But he is a physical cornerback. You can't take that away from him. So it really comes right back down to the whole idea of what makes Bowman better than Jamar Taylor? Is it simply because he's healthier, or does he actually have some legitimate skill above Jamar Taylor? And now I'll give the floor to our special guest, Antoine. Antoine, thank you for joining us. And
Yeah, no problem.
What do you think about the Bowman signing?
Yeah, it's good for depth. Honestly, that's definitely a position to need, and yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Especially if you're a Dolphin fan, I think you have to see what's out there. I mean, like I say, the corner, like you was hitting on, like Jamar Taylor, Will Davis really hadn't worked out so far. So you get a guy like Bowman, see what he can do, kind of kick the tires, and I don't think it's a bad signing at all, to be completely honest with you.
But who do you expect to be the starter going forward? Do you think it's going to be Jamar Taylor, or do you expect Bowman to easily beat him out?
Easily. I wouldn't say that. I do like Taylor, but Taylor has been, like you said, hasn't been able to stay healthy. That's really the main problem there. If he can stay healthy, then I do expect him to be the guy, but health has been a big concern, and also, depending on who they decide to draft, that could be, another option as well. So, but I don't expect them to draft the corner in the first round, especially with the Bowman signing. But I definitely think he will push Jamar Taylor, and I think I'm gonna go with Taylor to push it out. But again, you never know what happens once you get into training camp, because there's so many battles and things that happen.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Chad, do you have anything?
No, I agree with Antoine. I think Bowman's the most important thing, again, is he provides depth. There's so many situations in today's NFL where you need 3 cornerbacks or more on the field. So, it's unlikely that Jamar Taylor, Bryce McCain, and Brent Grimes, all 3 will stay healthy all year. And so more likely than not, it doesn't even matter who wins the training camp battles. It's that you have that extra corner available.
They're going to play.
So, yeah, exactly. And, you don't want to be in the situation, I should say, that Miami ended up in last year, where we were playing critical games like against the Patriots and Ravens, and, we're having to start R.J. Sanford with hardly any experience, going up against Tom Brady in must-win games. So getting a depth at cornerback like it's very important.
I wouldn't be opposed to a cornerback in the draft as long as it's not at 14. I don't want to go into the whole Trey Waynes rant that I did a couple weeks ago again, but everybody by now who listens to this show knows exactly how I feel about Wayne, so I'm not going to go into that again. And Marcus Peters, as far as I'm concerned, he's the top cornerback in this draft. He's probably the only corner that we could draft at 14 that I wouldn't be upset about. But I just see that cornerback at the moment. If I don't want to spend our first-round pick on a guy who's only going to be starting next season, because I understand they're saying that Kevin Coyle's going to simplify his defensive schemes, but exactly how much can you simplify your defensive schemes that rookies won't have to struggle in order to understand what's going on? That sounds like it's going to take a lot of simplification, considering how complicated they said the schemes were to start with.
Yeah, I agree with that, and also the fact that I don't think it's a really good corner draft. So I like Peters as well. Like he'd be the only one that I would, pretty much spend a first round pick on. Everybody else, I think, are kind of like, second round picks and, below. But Peters to me is the best corner in the draft, bar none.
The only issue that he has is that he needs to stop fighting with the coaches and actually
do what he's off the field stuff. Yeah. On the field, you can't take away with his talent and what he can do on the football field. But yeah, his extracurricular things, really hurt him.
Yeah, that's all he needs to do is just need to behave himself.
Listen, yeah.
So now that we've talked about Bowman, then we can move on from this 50-50 starter special teams guy. Let's talk about real quick LaRon Byrd. It was reported by there was a report and a story by Omar Kelly of the Sun Sentinel, our favorite beat writer in the world, of course. And the Dolphins re-signed the former Hurricane. He's 6'4". He's 205 pounds, ran a 4.46 in the 40-yard dash. I mean, yeah, he's got some great measurables, but for some reason he's only spent like 1 year in the league, and he got one catch for 8 yards with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
So, and when he was on the practice squad, supposedly the coaching staff was really high on him, and then he got the shoulder injury that knocked him out in early December. That's all according to the article. So he brings up some interesting the measurables themselves. They bring up some interesting possibilities. 6'4", 4.46. It actually kind of reminds me, just by measurables alone, just by those alone, he kind of reminds me of Dorial Green Beckham. Now, obviously, he's not going to be nearly as talented as DGB because he's been bouncing around the league, and I don't see any character issues that he might have. So, but just by the measurables alone, if we could spend some time polishing this guy up, he could become a big deal. It's just a matter of how long are you willing to spend, or are you willing to put him on the practice squad and think that, well, if he's so promising, maybe somebody can scoop him up. Those are impressive measurables for a wide receiver. And running a 4.46 at 6'4", that's pretty impressive. I'll say that much.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think, like, anytime you go into training camps and anything like that, you sign a bunch of guys and you kind of just see what they can do. And if they show you something, you keep them around. So I don't mind the Bird signing at all. As you hit on, the measurables are outstanding. Big guy, pretty fast, and honestly, the Dolphins, it's the need. They need a big receiver, and I'm not saying Bird is going to be that, going to solve that issue. But again, like, you never know once the guy's going to do it once you bring him into camp. Just because it didn't work out in somewhere else, like in Arizona, doesn't mean it won't work out in Miami. So you just you bring in guys in and you kick the tires and you see what happens. You don't really have any expectations, to be honest with you. So you just see what they can do and, get them out there maybe for a preseason game. If they perform well, then you just keep seeing what they can do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I mean, he's, like you guys mentioned, the measurables. I think it's unlikely that he's probably going to make the team. The way I would see that happening is if, for whatever reason, it just comes together for him and he's having a great camp and maybe some injuries happen. But I really think we're going to probably add a new wide receiver, most likely in the draft, or if it doesn't happen, then you'll probably see them pull the trigger on one of these veterans. They'll bring one of those guys in. But to me right now, Rashard Matthews is probably targeted as their number 4 wide receiver, and they haven't added who's going to be their number 3 wide receiver yet. And that leaves him competing with somebody like Matt Hazel, probably for a 5th wide receiver spot, which may or may not be I don't know how many receivers they'll carry. I suspect they'll carry 5, but depending on what their practice squad's made up of, they may even only carry 4 to go through the season. They would add somebody from the practice squad if needed, if an injury were to occur.
Yeah, that's kind of the wild card kind of here. I think is Jordan Cameron, since he's pretty much a wide receiver on tight end legs. He can be a dual tight ends. Formation with him and Deion Sims would be pretty impressive, if you ask me. That's the only thing that I'm thinking about that might make it so that it's not that important to draft a wide receiver if we're kind of counting on Jordan Cameron instead. And I wouldn't be totally against that. I can understand the reasoning, but I'm kind of hoping for a stud wide receiver in the draft anyway, because we need to be keeping that up, because as much as we like Kenny Stills, he's going to get paid in next year. We're either going to have to probably extend the guy, or we're going to have to be prepared to let him go, because considering how much he produced with Drew Brees, if he does well here, then he's going to want his money. And if he doesn't do well here, then we're not going to want him anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Stills looks extremely – I looked at a lot of film on him, and he's extremely explosive. And I think what you're going to be really surprised about with Kenny Stills is how good he is in short area space. He didn't do a lot of that in New Orleans. They did, he ran a lot of the deep routes with Drew Brees, but Laser loves to get the wide receivers the ball right out on the perimeter and let them try to make plays. And he looks really sensational at being able to do that. He's extremely, not just fast, he's extremely quick, and he's much stronger than you realize. And so he's going to be a nightmare for defenses to handle if you just have a corner out there on him, and he's got to match up and try to tackle him when he gets the ball in his hands. So matching him up with Jarvis Landry is going to be kind of fun to see that. So I'm pretty high on Stills. I can't remember his contract. I was thinking he has 2 full years before he's going to have to get a new contract. So I think we'll have him this year and then one additional year.
And next year. Yeah, this year and next year.
Then his contract will be up. So he's got a ways to go, before we have to worry about it. Now, where he'll be at in 2 years, it's hard to say. But I honestly, I'm more excited to get him in than Mike Wallace, although Mike Wallace is very talented. But I didn't think Mike Wallace was extremely quick in space relative if you're comparing him to Kenny Stills. So it'll be fun to watch.
Wallace's speed comes from straight away running up the field.
Yeah,
that's all about
vertical.
it.
Yeah, he's just a vertical, go type wide receiver. And Stills, he's fast, but yeah, you get him in open space, so he's gonna make moves and make defenders miss. That's the difference between him and Wallace.
Okay, again, the whole Byrd signing is pretty much just a depth move. He might be on the practice squad, and if he surprises in training camp, I'll be there to see it, and I always hope that these players that come out of nowhere come out and be a superstar, because hey, for a guy 6'4" and that fast, I'm perfectly okay with seeing what he's got. I'm hoping that he surprises somebody, unlike Damian with an A. Williams, who did a lot of surprising and then wound up getting cut anyway. I still don't understand that whole choice, but they know something we don't, I suppose. So I see in the chat room that a lot of people are already talking draft, and I think they've been talking draft ever since the show actually started. So we're going to go a little bit out of order here, and we're going to talk about the whole Melvin Gordon visit that's lined up. Gordon is, of course, according to our draft guide, he's the top running back in this draft. So, and one of the big things that he has going for him is his acceleration. He can, once he gets going, he can get going real fast. He has great quickness, open field moves. He ran for almost 5,000 yards in Wisconsin, and he got 49 career touchdowns. The only some of the weaknesses, though, is that supposedly he has limited receiving experience, and he has a problem missing open lanes, and that O-line created a lot of holes for him. So my thinking for this is that Melvin Gordon is maybe a slightly rawer and possibly higher potential version of Lamar Miller. And I don't really want another Lamar Miller. If I'm going for any running back in this draft, and this is just for me, if I'm going for any running back in this draft, it's somebody who has the ability to be a bruiser and can be the power runner that we've been missing ever since Ricky Williams was around. Because after Ricky, we tried to replace him with Daniel Thomas, and that kind of fell through a hole and kind of never stopped falling. So hopefully we don't have to deal with him anymore. He won't come back and haunt us in our dreams and on the field. As far as I'm concerned, Todd Gurley, there are other running backs out there who are more fit for the Dolphins. Melvin Gordon, to me, is just another Lamar Miller, and I'm really not interested in having a second Lamar Miller. We already have a receiving back in Damian Williams. I think he can be really good in this league. We need a power runner, and we don't. That's why I don't think Gordon is a good idea.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of his either. He's a good athlete, not great. He's not very fast. I know some people compared him to Jamal Charles, but he doesn't nearly have the speed of Jamal Charles has, and he's also unproven as a pass catcher as well. So, and I'm not, so a lot of people liked him in Wisconsin. I think he was really a product of their offensive line, to be completely honest with you, because if you put a physical defense together, you saw against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. They were just able to get in there and just disrupt a lot of plays, and he wasn't able to just break any plays and make have any big plays in that game. So I'm not as high on Melvin Gordon as some people. I like Todd Gurley, provided he can stay healthy. But for this team, for the Dolphins, I agree with you 100%. Gurley probably fits the mold better because, again, you want somebody that's going to break tackles as opposed to somebody that's kind of be a finesse type runner, which you already have on Lamar Miller.
Yeah, if Miami's going to draft a running back early, Gurley's the only one I would probably even consider, just because the position's devalued so much. And Lamar Miller had a really good year. You can get free agent veteran running backs so affordable late in the offseason after the draft if they need one.
Sean.
Yeah, I like a Noshawn. Everybody's talking about Noshawn, but I haven't heard anything. I really question whether he's in good shape and he's ready to play football or not. So I don't know what he's doing. Not saying that he's not. I just haven't heard anything that's updated from him. But as an example, you can get players like that later on, and they're not really needing a starting running back. Lamar Miller progressed very nicely last year, and so. I don't know that they need to invest a high draft pick. I understand the appeal in Gurley because he's probably a top 5, top 10 pick for sure if he's healthy. And so you got to think if he does get his knee rehab, he's the kind of back that can change how a defense has to play against you because he's so difficult to stop. He is special, but I just don't know that Miami has the luxury to pick him because, if you break up Todd Gurley and you still keep Dallas Thomas as your starting guard, you're still going to have some struggles.
Well, the thinking is,
we've got to. You have to address that at some point, I guess. That's my saying. But I understand the appeal for Gurley, and I would be heartbroken if they drafted him. But you just have to keep in mind it's not a need position, and it's not a player. I don't know when he'll even be available. It may not be till the middle of the season until he'd even be healthy enough to play. And so those are some hard factors working against him.
That's the only thing about Gurley that makes it so tempting. Because when you hear somebody compare him to Adrian Peterson, and for me, I actually think that being compared to Marshawn Lynch is a better comparison than being compared to Peterson. Can you imagine how much? It's I understand the whole Dallas Thomas aspect. Believe me, I am dreading the idea of Dallas Thomas as the starting guard again. I could go into it. I could talk about that forever. But think about this. Could you imagine Beast Mode 2.0? Man, if he's really that special, if he really is Marshawn Lynch 2.0, then I don't see any way that we can be stopped. If Tannehill continues to progress, and we have Todd Gurley / Marshawn Lynch a la Gurley, but it's just beast mode 2.0. We would scream at the chance of getting Marshawn Lynch. So if Gurley is Lynch, assuming he's healthy, that's the really tempting part of it.
Gurley's actually quite a bit more talented than Lynch, to be honest. Not that Lynch isn't a great running back, but he's a real physical inside yard after contact type guy. Gurley is a guy if he returns to his form that he displayed in college, and that not only is he a powerful runner, he's got the speed to take it to the house. So he is a rare talent.
Yeah.
But again, ACLs make me nervous because everything that you're talking about that's assuming that he'll have the same ability that he had prior to his knee injury. And ACLs, again, they typically take a full year to recover from, and a lot of times, particularly running backs, it's almost a year past that before people they're quote unquote back to form. And so that's my biggest concern with Gurley is that are you talking a full year away before he's even contributing? And players are only going to be around for 4 or 5 years on their contracts, and so you're already wasting a full year into him more than likely before he's going to be a major contributor to your ball club. So is he that elite of a talent? I think he's probably a great running back, and I'd love to get him in the second round, but you do have to keep in mind Georgia's offensive line was pretty solid. And the same issue with Melvin Gordon is you just got to be careful with these running backs that are playing behind very good offensive lines because they make them look maybe a little bit better than they are. So that's where I kind of like fall in there. Now, the scenario I could see Miami realistically getting Gurley would be if some kind of a trade happens, and if Miami for some reason trades back in this draft, and they're into the 20s somewhere, and Gurley falls that far, I think you can start to justify maybe taking that risk to bring him on board for the future if you pick up an extra draft pick and fall back a little bit, because then you can maybe feel like you can fill the inside linebackers and guard and positions like that maybe in the second round and still have Gurley on your team. Then that's a real possibility, but that's probably a dream scenario.
Yeah, that's the only thing with me. It's like we can understand the temptation. I don't get the whole Gordon visit, but for Gurley, and for whatever it's worth, Arthur Lynch recently answered our own Matthew Kanata and said that Todd Gurley is one of the most special players he's ever played with, and he's a game changer. So, of course, he's a Georgia Bulldog as well. So take that as you will.
Yeah, I will say this too about Gurley real quick. I just think that, he does a lot more as far as like the playmaking aspect than Melvin Gordon. Like he breaks tackles, he's a better pass catcher out the backfield, and also not to say the Dolphins would use him in this capacity, he can run kickoff returns as well. So he does a lot. He's a pure athlete, breaks tackles. That's where people compare him to Adrian Peterson. He just doesn't have the frame that Adrian Peterson has. So that's the only thing. That's the only reason why I would compare him. But he does break a lot of tackles like a la Adrian Peterson, or like you said, Marshawn Lynch. So I think definitively, had he been healthy, he would have been a top 5, top 10 pick, no doubt. But he got hurt, kind of like what happened to Willis McGahee. The same type of thing. He's going to fall back a little bit, and you're probably going to have a team take him in the 20s, I believe.
And if that's the case, and let me just ask, let's speculate here. Let's assume for a moment that Gurley does get drafted, and he winds up being healthy by some miracle of miracles. He's healthy because he got some special, supplement or something. I'm not going to say PEDs. No PEDs. Nothing illegal. He'll be fine. Nothing illegal. Okay, let's assume for a moment that he would be ready for the start of the season. Do you think he would start over Lamar Miller? Is he that special after Lamar Miller's breakout season?
I don't know. I mean, in this NFL, I don't know if it's gonna really matter. That he starts like right away. I think they would probably ease him in anyway, just considering what he comes off. I mean, he was coming off of. So I don't know if he would get the bulk of the carries, but I fully expect him to get. If he was completely healthy, he would at least get 15 carries a game, honestly, to start off with. And, you have him as a change of pace back with Lamar Miller. Why not? That's going to be hard for a team. That's an extra weapon for somebody to stop the Miami Dolphins. Like, you got a game plan for, not only Tannehill and Kenny Stills and Jarvis Landry, you got to compare for Todd Gurley as well, somebody that can just, a game changer, like you say, Arthur Lynch said. So, yeah, I think it, I don't know if I don't know if they're going to start him right away, just considering he's coming off the ACL, but he would get a lot of carries. He would get a lot of play right away. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah, assuming he was healthy. I think the chances that Gurley's ready to go the first game of the season is not likely. I think it's, again, and I don't know, especially if Miami were to get Gurley, I don't know why they would rush him. I mean, with Lamar Miller, so you'd probably started him off giving him, a few carries here and there, and if he's just tearing it up, then you'll start increasing his workload. So the bigger thing is if they do draft Todd Gurley, that to me would mean the chances are that Lamar Miller would not return next year, because if you have Gurley, you're not going to put a contract into Lamar Miller. Running backs just are not at a position anymore where they get paid big dollars, and so you're probably going to let Lamar Miller walk, and you would then make next season Gurley would be your featured runner without a doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty much the case with Gurley. He's a special talent for sure, but whether or not he's the Dolphins pick at 14, we're going to have to see what happens with that. It's definitely tempting, and I can see them going for it. Well, Twan, while we still have you, I just want to into this. I just want to get into this topic real. Well, it won't be real quick. I have a lot to say about this, but I want to get your perspective.
I bet you do.
I want to get your reaction first before I unleash my anger on this whole thing. So a couple of days ago, you were there, I'm sure. our favorite beat writer Omar Kelly commented on the fact that Phillip Rivers, the San Diego Chargers quarterback, was on the trading block, and he suggested that without even hesitation, he would gladly offer Ryan Tannehill and our first rounder to the San Diego Chargers for Phillip Rivers. Now, since we're on a time limit with you here, I want to get your ideas first. Is there a method to this madness, or do you think that this is just wow? I have stronger words, but not on air.
I mean, it's Omar Kelly. I mean, he's gonna. It's very thought provoking. He's gonna say things that kind of move the meter. So I agree with some things I do, some things I don't. This is one of those instances I don't agree with, even though I love Phillip Rivers. I think Phillip Rivers is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, bar none. But again, we're talking about a guy that's almost 34 years old, and how much gas in the tank does he have? And let's be honest, like, do you think the Dolphins are close to winning a Super Bowl? I don't. I'm going to be completely honest. I can see if they were he was the missing piece to the Dolphins winning a Super Bowl. I mean, he's not. Like, they have other issues going on. So I like Tannehill developing. A lot of people ripped him last year for not the deep ball thing. I just think that that was ridiculous, honestly. I think he's going to improve, honestly. And also, him and Mike Wallace didn't necessarily have the chemistry as well. He threw deep passes to other players well. And, I wouldn't say, he wasn't the most accurate at times. But, again, he had chemistry with other players throwing deep balls as well. So I think he's going to be fine. He's progressing the way you want to in a player. So, no, I actually wouldn't make the trade, honestly. I just think that, Omar, I mean, he says stuff like this at times. I mean, Dolphin fans come to expect stuff like this from Omar Kelly, and it's fine. That's what he does. He pushes, he kind of moves the meter, gets people talking, and, whether right or wrong, you have a certain reaction when you hear it.
Yeah, I couldn't. I agree with Antoine that to me there's no way. Omar gets frustrating to fans because and I've said this, and this is my personal opinion, he has a bit of an agenda against Tannehill, and my belief is Tannehill has no interest in even talking to Omar Kelly or giving him any interviews or giving him any access, and that's frustrating to him. So he would rather have a quarterback in there that he can probably get better access in with the team. But with that being said, that's crazy. I mean, Phillip Rivers, yes, he is a great quarterback. He's probably a top 10 quarterback. He's not what I would call a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league. He never has been quite up to that level. He's more along in that second tier of quarterbacks like Ben Roethlisberger, where he's a quality starter and he's a quarterback you can win with. But for one, what I don't like about Rivers is he's probably the least mobile quarterback in the league, and he's like Dan Marino slow with the ball in his hands. And so you have to have a very good offensive line in front of him, because he's not a guy that's going to be able to move around in the pocket. If you're having trouble with a certain player and you're going to roll him around and run with him, and especially doesn't fit the Bill Lazor offense at all, where he likes to do the read option. I don't think Phillip Rivers could do the read option at all. So, so most of it's just, theoretical. And, there's only, granted, Tannehill has a ways to go. He's somewhere, in my opinion, between probably the top 15 to top 10. He's not any higher than that right now, but he's definitely got a lot of ceiling to him yet, and he's getting better every year. But you always got to factor in your age and where they're at and how long it takes to get a quarterback to where Tannehill's at right now. And there's only a few quarterbacks in the league I think that would be even realistically more viable than Tannehill. I mean, you can make a clear argument that you would rather have Andrew Luck than Ryan Tannehill. I can understand that, or Russell Wilson because of his playoff experience and Super Bowl experience, because they're guys that are young with a lot of years ahead of them. But the quarterbacks that are at the top of the game right now, I mean, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, these are all older quarterbacks that are down to the last few years of their careers. And, Ryan Tannehill has a good 8 to 10 years probably ahead of him yet. And, other than Aaron Rodgers, who, to me, he's clearly the best quarterback in the game. And not like Green Bay would even consider trading him. But, once you take Aaron Rodgers out of there and you can throw out some comparable quarterbacks like Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson, I don't know who you would rather have on your team right now than Brian Tannehill. So trading him for Phillip Rivers seems unlikely. And it is interesting, all this Phillip Rivers trade talk. So I do think there is some substantial truth to that the Chargers are maybe shopping Phillip Rivers around a little bit, not too dissimilar to what they did with Drew Brees. When Drew Brees had that shoulder injury and he got older, they moved Drew Brees off and brought Phillip Rivers in. So maybe the Chargers are maybe looking at moving Phillip Rivers in this draft to try to jump up and grab, one of those top quarterbacks to, get a young guy in there to start building around again. But other than that, I agree with Antoine. I think it's Omar just, he's trying to do something to stir things up, because that's what he likes to do. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely all there. I'm trying not to get all mad and stuff because sometimes I just hear stuff and it kind of just makes me see red. This is one of those things that I just kind of wanted to explode because you're trying to tell me that you would trade our rising young star, who, ironically enough, he had admitted had not hit his ceiling, and our first-round draft pick for a 33 going on 34-year-old quarterback who, ever since LaDainian Tomlinson left San Diego, the San Diego Chargers, since Tomlinson's leaving, has gone 9-7, 8-8, 7-9, 9-7, 9-7. So, congratulations, Phillip Rivers. You're a top 10 quarterback, and your team still can't get to the playoffs. So, I'm not impressed by you. So. You hear the way some people talk, and you hear that it's all about the quarterback, and if we had a better quarterback, then we would be good to go for the rest of the however many years we have. So why is it that Phillip Rivers, who is a top 10 quarterback, cannot make it to the playoffs? If it really is all about the quarterback, why is it that the Chargers have gone 9-7, 8-8, 7-9, 9-7, 9-7? And all of this ever since LaDainian Tomlinson decided that he was going to leave San Diego. I don't see that as a coincidence. I see the San Diego Chargers as being special because of their running back, much like I see the Seattle Seahawks being special because of Marshawn Lynch. I don't see it as a coincidence that every time Lynch was shut down, Russell Wilson struggled to make things happen.
No, that's true, but I would say without a doubt, there's probably 20 to 25 teams that would love to have Phillip Rivers on their roster right now. Somebody like the New York Jets, I'm sure.
No, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Where he would be a massive upgrade. But my point is he's risen up every year, and so Phillip Rivers you make good points. It's not like Phillip Rivers has done what somebody like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or that level of quarterback is. He's a solid quarterback, and solid quarterbacks are very viable in the NFL. But I think Tannehill's reached that level of also being a solid quarterback. So I don't know why you would trade off somebody that's in their mid-20s for somebody that's in their mid-30s that are, both. I think they're close. I would say Rivers is, a little bit better quarterback right now at reading defenses, and he's more savvy and stuff. But he's limited in his mobility, and Tannehill's caught up substantially in his ability to read defenses and get the ball out. So definitely not enough differential to trade him.
What I was gonna say too is I just think if people just are impatient. Like you have Andrew Luck is doing big things and coming to the league very fast and taking the lead by storm. Same thing with Russell Wilson. They're winning at a high level, and then you have Tannehill who. It's not his fault the Dolphins are necessarily where they are. Like he's progressing the way you want a player to progress. Like it's just a team around him that has to get better. And so I just think people are really, they want to win now. And if you're not winning now, then they want to get rid of you. So that's what the whole, Tannehill thing as well, comes into play. So, but yeah, I think he's really progressing the way you're supposed to. And it wasn't his fault the Dolphins didn't get to the playoffs last year. He was far. A lot of people say he's the problem. Like it's other issues with the Dolphins that are non-Ron Tannehill related.
Yeah, I agree completely. I thought Tannehill played well enough last year to make the playoffs, and even though I think it's a very fair statement, Andrew Luck has made the playoffs, and he's had a very good career ever since he's been in the league. But I get frustrated with the Andrew Luck comparisons because you just look at the AFC South the last few years, and every year they have two of the worst teams in the league that you're getting to play against. And so here Tannehill he's learning the ropes against Tom Brady and having to pay the Patriots twice a year, well, Andrew Luck's getting to play the Jacksonville Jaguars twice a year and the Tennessee Titans twice a year, Houston Texans twice a year. And so my thought would be if you put Ryan Tannehill and the Dolphins in that division, he probably would have made the playoffs a couple years in a row, real similar to Andrew Luck. So you're absolutely right. You got to have some patience. It's rare that, quarterbacks come in and within 1 to 2 years they're just dominating the league. And quarterbacks that are making the playoffs, like Russell Wilson, for example, they have very good teams around them. And so
Exactly.
that's one of the reasons why they're making the playoffs. And so, like I said, I just don't think there's many quarterbacks out there right now that would be more valuable. If you just threw all the quarterbacks back in the pot and everybody started drafting again, I think Tannehill would be top 10 pick for sure.
I'll say this too. Like, if you don't think, like, if Tannehill's on the Texans, you think they made the playoffs last year?
I don't know. According to quarterback rating, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a top 10 quarterback last year.
No, I don't want to hear all that. I want to hear all that. To me, they get into the playoffs. They're 10, 11, possibly 11-win team. They're at least a 10-win team with Tannehill there.
And that's the thing.
No doubt.
That's the thing. It always comes back down to where else would he go that suddenly he would be a star. I think with Andy Dalton, I think in Cincinnati, Tannehill would have led the team to a playoff win. Andy Dalton has had one of the top O-lines for the last couple of years now, and he still flunks no matter what. And
that team around him.
And a dominant receiver.
That team around him. That team is Super Bowl ready around him, and they can't, progress any further.
It's like Andy Dalton is one of Tannehill's peers. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you seen what Andy Dalton has? If you want to play results, then play results, but don't play but you have to play everybody's results. You can't just look at our results and then look at everybody else's numbers. Like when Omar was talking about Phillip Rivers being a top 10 quarterback, okay, yeah, he is stat-wise, but again, I'll say it again. Ever since LaDainian Tomlinson, their star running back, left, 9-7, 8-8, 7-9, 9-7, 9-7. All of those years, Phillip Rivers was being a top 10 quarterback, and they couldn't get by. Why? Because of the team around Phillip Rivers. It's not good enough. And also, I might add, Phillip Rivers has to get by Peyton Manning twice a year. That's very similar. But all I will say is this. Why is it that Rivers gets a pass and Tannehill gets clobbered because he has to go by Tom Brady twice a year? It's wild card or bust, because every single year the Patriots win the division, and ever since Peyton Manning showed up in Denver, it's pretty much been the Denver Broncos all the way, with one exception year being for Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's pretty well consensus that Tannehill for Rivers is a bad idea, to say it modestly. Although, as you talk about when the Chargers were making the playoffs and making Super Bowl pushes, it was when they had LaDainian Tomlinson. That might make you rethink Gurley a little bit, doesn't it?
Back to the tempting of Gurley. It's like, yeah, again, getting a superstar running back would do a lot for us. Like, I like Miller, but he's not Marshawn Lynch, and he's not Adrian Peterson. Definitely by no stretch of the imagination. No way.
No, he's not. I mean, he really seems to fit in the Laser offense really well. He was doing some things last year that were impressive on, how far he would go up to the line before he would cut when they were doing misdirection runs and stuff like that. He had clearly learned a lot. So he's come along, and Lamar Miller is one of those guys. Wasn't he a junior when he came out of college? So
yes, he was. Yeah, University of Miami. He's a junior. He came out early.
Yeah, so that's he's young. I don't know how old he is. I bet you Lamar Miller is under 25 still, though. So
yeah, he is. He came out when he was 20. So yeah, he's still very young.
Yeah, so he has a lot of football left in him, I would think. So I'm excited to watch him this year. So I like I said, Gurley's fun to talk about. He'd be exciting to have, but the Dolphins need a starting player right now in the first round, and as nice as Gurley would be, he would be really your plan for next year to play a lot. So they need to upgrade their linebackers. They need a new offensive guard. They really could use an upgraded third wide receiver, and all those needs are higher than running back right now. So with missing a third round pick, it makes it hard to have the luxury to take Gurley.
And the thing is, too, this team is trying to win now, obviously, because Philbin is really on the hot seat. Like, let's just be completely honest. And Stephen Ross is really putting pressure. He expects the playoffs, and if they don't make the playoffs, you have to think of changes that are going to be made. So, I don't know if you can really afford to wait on the Ty Gurley if he's not 100% ready. If he starts like if he doesn't play like half the game, like how effective he's going to be, and how is that going to help you in 2015? Probably not.
Oh yeah, the seat's definitely hot. I mean, I don't care. Even if you're a multi-billionaire like Stephen Ross, he just gave over $100 million to a football player, and I don't think he did that with the intent of 8 and 8's good enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and Ndamukong Suh's supposed to be the thing that pushes you over the edge. He didn't pay for some random guy. He paid for the best defensive tackle in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that Suh is just going to make the whole defense as a whole much better, and it's gonna stop the whole falling apart at the last minute thing. But if the Dolphins don't win at this point, then I'm going to be very, very, very stunned. So yeah, I just want to make sure that that gets done. So all right. Well, I think we've talked ad nauseum about the whole Phillip Rivers thing. I'm done talking about it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I've managed to keep my anger to a minimum. So I'm gonna.
Oh, you did good. You did good. You didn't go on a rant.
Yeah, I didn't go on a rant. Not yet, anyway. Phillip Rivers. It's like, I understand. Phillip Rivers is better than Tannehill right this second. I get it. I do. It's fine. But I don't want Phillip Rivers 1 year when we could have Tannehill for the next 10 years. That's my only way. That's my only thinking.
Well, we got Antoine here. I just wanted to get his opinion on the draft. A lot of people are talking receiver, but I'd like to get if he were Dennis Hickey or Mike Tannenbaum and he were going to be pulling the trigger in the war room, who would be his first and second round picks? Looks like you have him muted right now.
Yeah, I accidentally muted him because he had to take care of something, and now I can't seem to unmute him.
I'll tell you what, while you're doing that, I'll start. So this is my push.
Antoine, you have to unmute you. We have our...
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right, there we go. I like Devontae Parker, to be completely honest. If he's on the board, I feel like you absolutely have to take him. Obviously, we talked about bit wide receiver as a need. So yeah, that'd be the way that I would go if I'm the Dolphins, if he's right there as well. Second round pick, obviously we talked about linebacker being a need. I personally like Hendricks, UCLA. Like I think if he's on the board as well, he's one of the best cover linebackers in the draft. That's something else, another position that you really need to address as well. So that'd probably be what I would do as far as like if I'm the Miami Dolphins for the first 2 rounds, if those players are there.
Yeah, for me, I like the Devontae Parker, assuming he's there, which I'm starting to lose faith that he's actually gonna be. But if not, I'm really hoping for an offensive lineman because I understand the pick would not be a sexy one and it would make a lot of people raging that we picked another offensive lineman, and I understand the whole anger the raging of that, but I'm so tired of watching Tannehill fall time after time after time after time. We need a legit interior offensive line. We did a good job by extending Pouncey, and we'll talk about that momentarily. We've locked up Brandon Albert at left tackle. We've got Jawan James at the right. And Billy Turner, I honestly believe, is going to take care of right guard, and Pouncey said that he would be a stud as well. So it really just comes down to the left guard spot, and if we can just take care of that one, I follow the Dallas Cowboys mentality. 3 years they went 8-8, 8-8, 8-8, and they were America's team had become the poster child for mediocrity. Suddenly, without warning, nothing changed other than DeMarco Murray started running the ball more, and their offensive line was solidified beyond belief. They made the playoffs. I don't see that as a coincidence either. I don't really think of coincidences as coincidences. They're just like you finally figured out the problem and you solved it. For the Cowboys, their offensive line was the last solution. So I don't understand why it can't be for the Dolphins.
I'm with you on the line. My two picks would be first round. I would take Lael Collins from LSU if he's available with the 14th pick. I think he's a nasty guard you could put in there, and you can put him with Turner and Pouncey. I think we would have what you're hoping for. I think you'd have a solid interior line, and assuming Brandon Albert stays on schedule and Juwan James, I think we'd have finally an above-average offensive line, which we really haven't had since Tannehill has been there. Second round, I honestly, my favorite linebacker in the draft is Denzel Perryman. I know he doesn't have the coverage skills that Hendricks has, but he's a knock guys out linebacker, and I love the idea of putting him behind Ndamukong Suh when they're going to have to double team him and letting him run free around in there. We would be a very difficult team to run on, and that would take care of our run defense. So that's a pick. He's kind of jumping all over. I've seen him rated the number 1 inside linebacker, and I've seen him rated the number 3 inside linebacker. So it's really interesting to see where he's going to fall at. But that would be my two picks if I had.
I like Perriman as well. I do like. I'm a big Denzel Perriman fan, definitely.
Yeah. So Twan, do you got to go, man, or you have time to stay around?
Yeah. I got another podcast. I had a commitment before you guys asked me on, but I really appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we can do this again. I look forward to it.
Oh, for sure, man. We'll have you on. We'll have you on soon again. Thanks so much, man, for everything you do.
All right. I talk to you guys later.
All right. So that was Antoine Staley of the Bleacher Report. And you can follow him at well, actually, let me pull up his Twitter handle right now. Yes, Antoine's at Antoine Staley, just as it is. How you spell it? ANTWANSTALEY. Antoine Staley. Awesome insight on all things Dolphins. You ask him about that, he'll talk to you about the Raiders and all sorts of other stuff. He knows pretty much everything. He's really good at pretty much anything you want to talk about, and he'll get you something. So, well, thanks, Antoine, for being on. And, well, we'll move on to the next topic, and that was the whole Mike Pouncey extension. Mike Pouncey, our Pro Bowl center, and two-time Pro Bowl center now, at least. And we saw the conference with Pouncey, and he had a bit of an emotional outburst in his interview, and I saw a different Mike Pouncey than I'm used to seeing. After getting his 5-year deal, and I don't have his contract numbers up right now, but I can get that up in a second. He seemed different somehow. He seemed to have matured overnight, and his emotional outbursts, to me, it seemed like he had realized that it was time for him to stop being, I don't know what the word is. I guess you could say that he was being immature, having issues with the whole his maturity off the field, the whole Free Hernandez thing that happened. That was not a pretty sight, and he did a lot of. He never did anything illegal, but he did a lot of stupid things. The only thing that he was going up against him is that he did a lot of things that were just dumb. Nothing bad, just dumb, that you shouldn't do it. And I'm looking forward to him being the next superstar center for the Miami Dolphins for the next 5 years or so. He's an anchor that we can rely on at center. The reason he failed was because he was at guard last season, and guard is not his position. He hasn't played guard since he was in college, and so I honestly expect Mike Pouncey to become a leader in the locker room now. He seems to have grown up. His emotional outburst, and I keep calling it an outburst. He just cried, man. He was emotional. He was so touched by getting the contract. I think he honestly expected to not get a contract. But now that he actually did get it, he has turned into possibly this leader guy that we've been needing in the locker room. And if that is the case, the team already likes Mike Pouncey. So after that, I would imagine that they really love the guy now.
Well, yeah, obviously they made him the highest paid center. They like him, but I think his outburst, or I shouldn't say an outburst, his show of emotion was one is they didn't have to do it. He had a year of his contract, so they could have let him just play this year out, then tried to re-sign him, and so they gave him, that guarantee a year early to lock him up, which I think was good. And I think that because of those little things, like the Free Hernandez thing isn't a huge thing, but there's other things too. He got served with the police at the New England game to be in the Hernandez trial. And he just had done, and then they had those incidents at the nightclub where people, I don't remember the guy that claimed he got beat up by him or something like that, but they never found him guilty, him and his brother. But it's not that he did anything, like you said, illegal. He wasn't caught using like drugs or beating up his girlfriend or something like that. But it was that he was making some foolish decisions himself, and then it was reflecting poorly on the organization. And I think having done that and then having the team stand behind him, that was what set him off, was because it was in question. Miami didn't have to do that, and he had done some questionable things. And I think you were hearing him say, hey, look, these guys stood behind me, and my hope is that he's going to come in now into Miami, and he's going to be working so hard just to prove that they made the right choice. And so that's where it's going to be at. You touched on this, Lewis. He got a bad rap this last year because he was hurt. I mean, he had a really bad hip injury. He had to rehab, and he was playing guard. And I would say he was terrible at guard. He wasn't a dominating guard as he was.
He was still better than Dallas Thomas.
Yeah, I being a joke, I kind of wonder if I could probably get in there and do about an adequate job compared to Dallas Thomas. I mean, all you got to do is turn around and look out to the quarterback, and you're doing the same job as Dallas Thomas. So, joking aside, though, is he's had some bad history, but he's going to be the guy going forward. So, it was good to see that. He was kind of humbled, because I'm hoping that he is past the stupid stuff, and he's just going to focus on football for the next few years and playing his contract out. And it was also, you touched on this earlier when he talked about Billy Turner. I thought that was interesting because it was the way the question was posed to him. It wasn't, hey, what do you think of Billy Turner? It was, who else do you see stepping up on this offensive line? And that's who he singled out as being a guy to keep an eye on. So that was definitely interesting to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking in the chat room now, and I'm seeing Finn's fan SC, and he mentioned Bullygate. Yeah, I understand what you're going with that, but again, Bullygate was not something illegal. He didn't get into trouble with the law. The only courtroom that he got in trouble with was the court of public opinion. He did something stupid. He didn't do something illegal. And besides, in all honesty, the whole Bullygate thing was really focused on Richie Incognito, and if you really wanted to go into who was in second place with that whole mess, it would probably have been John Jerry, from what I've heard. Pouncey was, I guess you could say, he was the third wheel in that whole Bullygate thing that was going on. Pouncey was kind of an afterthought, as far as I know, because the two people that were mentioned most often when it came to Bullygate, you would think it would be Incognito and Pouncey because Pouncey's the bigger name, but the first person that they said, the first two people that they mentioned with the Bullygate thing was Incognito and John Jerry. So if Pouncey had something to do with the Bullygate, I am assuming that it wasn't enough to turn off the Dolphins to either his talent, because either he's really just that talented and they wanted to keep him, or what he did was just not as bad. He did look bad. He did look childish, but it wasn't enough to get the Dolphins to be turned off to him. Pouncey is either as really, really good, which I really think he is, or what his involvement in the scandal was not enough to warrant him being booted out, because Richie Incognito did not last the rest of the season after that whole mess, and he got cut, and John Jerry almost went after the season was all over. So, but Pouncey was the one thing that stayed. Whether that was because he was on his rookie deal and he was cheap talent, or because it wasn't that big of a deal, and I have to feel like that's really what happened, because if he got his contract extension and he's now the highest paid center in football, I would assume that whatever Pouncey did, it wasn't enough to get the Dolphins all mad at him and hating him and wanting him out of Miami as quick as possible. Yes, he did look bad. He did do something stupid, but I mean, who doesn't do things that are stupid these days? I'm seeing players getting arrested for domestic violence and possession of marijuana, and like those things are not only stupid, they're also against the law, whether you believe it should be or not. But now that is something that I consider a serious issue. I would much rather have a guy get in trouble for overly teasing his teammate than somebody getting busted for using weed or getting caught beating up on his wife like a Ray Rice would. Now those things are not only stupid, those are also illegal, and those are grounds for somebody to get kicked off. Pouncey didn't do anything like that, and that's the hugest difference that I can think of.
Yeah, you said it right. I mean, he did some things that were foolish, but I didn't see him do anything that I would consider changing his value. I mean, I'm more worried about, are they showing up, doing their job that is required of them, putting the work in, and I think Pouncey's a real blue collar guy when it comes to playing football. So it's not things you want to see, because he embarrassed himself and the team a few times, but like you said, this is nothing like Adrian Peterson or Ray Rice, and the reason those guys are in trouble. So he just, and even the Aaron Hernandez. I mean, obviously the Aaron Hernandez thing was stupid, but if you look at it from the angle, they were teammates at Florida, and he was trying to defend a friend. I've always said, a real friend, if you show up and say, look, I don't know what's going on, I just killed somebody, a real friend is going to go to you and say, all right, where are we burying him? They're not going to immediately run and call the police on you.
Oh my gosh.
And so the point I'm making is that I'm not going to go hang Mike Pouncey up because he was backing up one of his friends. So granted, it was not a good horse to back publicly, but it's not like he was the one out there doing that, or he was helping him and he was an accomplice to any of that stuff. It just happened to be a friend of his that got into trouble. So I don't have any issues with that. So.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine, and I think Pouncey's going to be an anchor for the Dolphins for years and years to come. And assuming that Albert gets back healthy, even if it's not week 1, I still think we can get by 1 week. And I mean, hey, what else can you ask for the guy? He's done everything we've asked of him, short of just like being a problem. And I see our man Matthew Kanata. He actually can't talk on the show tonight, but I see him in our chat room. He's saying that he worked with his cousin a few years ago, and she's the nicest person ever, supporting him like crazy. I mean, and like he said, doesn't mean you're a bad person if you support the guy. That's what friends do. And like you said, Chad, yeah, that's what friends do. If I'm in trouble, I want to be able to have somebody that I can count on in times of need. I don't want to be a fair weather friend and say like, oh, well, you're in trouble, well, I'll see you later. Call me again when it's time to party again. Again, I understand what he did. I'm not going to condemn him for it, but it was really, really, really stupid what he did, because in the public eye, Aaron Hernandez was a murderer, and now that he's actually been declared guilty, so yeah, he's been declared a murderer, and he's gonna, as far as I know, he's getting put away for life. So, I mean, yeah, I would want somebody to be there to support me, but at the same time, you have to realize that you are in the public eye and people are looking at what you're doing, and anything that you do, whether for better or worse, can and will be used against you somehow. That's pretty much all it is. All there is to it. Well, I think that's about it for the show, unless, Chad, do you have anything else that you want to say before we wrap this and things up?
No, I want the draft to get here. That's what I want.
Yeah, I want the draft. The draft, I don't understand why the NFL – no, I take it back. I do understand why the NFL did that. They just want to make more money. They're making more hype. They're trying to drive the fans absolutely out of their minds so that when the draft finally does come around, they're going to be exploding and wanting, oh, my God, finally it's here. Yes, let's go. So they're just making their money. That's what the NFL does. They're the multi-billion-dollar organization. That's what they do. So I understand. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us for this PhinManiacs.com live podcast. If you didn't join us live, then join us when it's all said and done on the recording. You can download the MP3. You can listen to it on YouTube or right here on the website at the podcast station. And we'll see you next week for another edition of the PhinManiacs.com podcast.